So here we are recording. Jennifer Marilyn here, joined by Thelma Ojedis, and we are, hi Thelma,
Hello.
are going to be,
Hello,
we're
darling.
going to be chatting it up today. One of my favorite astrologer, Kim Falconer, she's just amazing. Anyway, she had mentioned something about how, in different forms of creativity, you allow a different part of yourself to come out. And I am totally taking that on board with doing video because I'm like, all right, this is going to be the version of me that comes out that, I don't know, I don't know, a different version, or it's all me, it's all you. Anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder, right? And if we remain in the curiosity of like, well, who is this person that's going to emerge, and like, what are they like, and how do they play? And then being present in dancing in the conversation, there it really is a creative space of like, I don't know, almost channeling, right? Like it's not even you anymore. It's like who? It kind of reminds me of when you used to call me Thelma. It's like, who is this Thelma? Yeah.
It's the magic maker. That's who Thelma is to me.
The Thelma.
So Thelma and I have known each other for a very, very long time. For a very long time. We'll just say now. Time is so weird.
A decade plus for sure.
Yeah, wild, isn't it?
I know. I was telling Jason our like story of how we met in silence, right? Like, who makes such a great friend in silence, right? And it just pops off just like that is, amazing.
Yeah. I think it's like my soul recognized your soul, even with no words and nothing else. You know what I mean? And it was like, I knew from the moment that
maybe we should like say why we were in silence, right? Because we know why we were in silence, but everybody else was like, so at a Vipassana center, Vipassana is a silent meditation retreat, 10 days of silence. It was amazing. So that's how we met, in that silent retreat. Yeah, it's been magic.
Yeah, I think that was one of my first meditation retreats too. Is that right? It was definitely one of the first ones. And Thelma's right. There's like this thing where you go in and you commit to not speaking for 10 days, and you end up meditating for like 16 hours a day, is it? Something.
But it's
like
not just like
so
not
wild.
Speaking, right? Like it's like not speaking, not reading, not writing, not watching not listening to music, strict vegan diet, right? You like twice a day, 4 a.m, 11, fasting. Like it's a whole shebangle. It's not just we don't talk to each other. Then on top of that, you throw in the like waking up at 4 a.m. to do your meditation, sitting for hours at a time without being able to move, remaining equanimous, which kind of sets the perfect stage for like where we're at now, right?
Exactly.
You gotta be still. You gotta remain equanimous, right?
Yeah, and not judge it, right? Like, like learning from Vipassana, like the whole thing is that you experience everything and you don't judge it. It's just what it is.
Or hold on to any of it. Right? It's like there's no judgment, and there's like a detachment, but you're just in observance of all of it. And reminding yourself to like come back to that place. Because the mind's gonna do what it does, right? It's a monkey. And then you gotta like bring it back
over and over again. And just kind of being playful with it, right? Like, that monkey mind, and then just being like playful with, every time you bring it back, and just also just being kind in that, right? Because it can go either way. So it can either be like, oh, come on, really? Are you gonna go there again? How come I can't do this, right? Or it can be like, oh, you silly monkey mind, get back over here, let's do it again.
Or even a celebration, right? Like, oh, I just caught myself. Like, I'm actually working now at the second attention. So like having it be like a inner celebration, celebrate yourself. Some people don't have that. Some people don't even can't even fathom Like they are what they are, and they have, there's no observer in there, at least, not in practice anyways.
And it is a practice, right? Because we are all human, and we can continue to do these things, and we can continue to create these new habits and these new pathways in our mind, of celebration, of playfulness, and that starts to override the criticism or the I guess whatever typical behavior pattern that we've had, and really being intentional about how you're bringing things back is so important. And I love that option of being celebratory with it, Thelma. I would love if you could talk more about the celebration part of it. If there's something that, when you're in that process of like bringing whatever it is back, like how do you celebrate? Like how does that work for you?
For me, it's an acknowledgement. It's not like a bells and whistles kind of thing, right? Because like it's what I focus my life on for the most part, right? So when I catch myself, in this new relationship, right, I catch myself so much in stories of the past that I start to project onto this play, and I catch, I've been so proud of myself, and I catch myself and I'm like, I'm not living in that story. That what I'm seeing is what I'm seeing. The meaning I'm adding to it is the meaning I'm adding to it, because I'm reaching into past and then putting it, right? Because that's what the mind does. That's like the brain's function, right? And I don't react. And I'm able to like be with myself and notice all the emotions, notice all the things, and watch the mind go. And then I'll like talk about it, if even that. Sometimes it just the awareness. And I get so psyched on myself. When I feel really proud of myself, I'll share it with him. And I'm like, I'm so proud I grew. Remember the other day when this happened and da-da-da? Like this whole thing, I would have done this back in the day, right? And I'm so, and there was nothing there. And, and I'm like, yeah, but for me, that's the celebration. It's not like necessarily a big to-do, other than like patting myself on the back and maybe like loving myself, right? Like you got this, you can do this. And yeah, it is a practice. And what you said about like the playfulness about it, right? It's because it's like, if I could give anybody and everybody one like piece of advice, I think it would be like, reduce the significance. It ain't that serious. None of it is that serious. And we can make it that serious, right? We can. That's a choice. Does it serve you? Does it not serve you? Is it going to work for you? Is it not going to work? But I forgot where I was going. I totally went off on a tangent. Like, you got to bring me back.
Yeah, that's it. That playfulness. I've like purposely cultivated this like in my life, because I have been someone who took things so seriously, right? And like, like every like crossing the T and dotting the I kind of, just being a bit perfectionist at times, right? And trying to like let that go to create a playful and curious attitude has been so worth it. So instead of stopping myself when I'm like, oh, I know I need to do this, but I'm like, oh, but I need it to be a certain way. I need it to be, it needs to look like someone who's been doing this thing for a long time, or it needs to have whatever version I have in my head. I've been really consciously being like, oh, I see that I am doing that again. Okay, that's funny. And I literally will be like, okay, I will hold a smile on my face and be like, I see that's coming up again. Okay. And then just be really curious and just really kind of like playful with it and being like, so what happens if I do it and it doesn't work? Oh, well, what happens if I do it and it does work? Great. What happens if I do it and I just find that it's not my thing? Well, that's cool too, right? Like, what happens if I do it and I find that, wow, I fucking love this, right? And then I want to do it more and more and more. And I feel like, cultivating that attitude of like curiosity and of playfulness has really helped with that for me, of letting go of that kind of perfectionism and it's, again, we're all human, always doing our best. And I feel like, yeah, when I'm in my highest version of who I am, and I'm in that, it feels amazing. And then when I'm not, then that's okay too, and just to continue, to continue going, right? I feel like in the process of like any change and transformation, we have the ability to recreate life how we want to. And I feel like, the more exposure we have of different ways of doing things, and how people operate in the world, and how you might perceive something, and how you might give meaning to that, is so important. And it doesn't have to be what everyone else does, right? And it doesn't have to be what you've done before, right? And I feel like, especially lately, I've really been like, okay, so if I'm being my best version, what does that look like? And how would
I don't
I
even go to
react
the
in that?
like best, right? Because sometimes I don't want to be my best, right? Like
Okay.
sometimes it's like, what's necessary here? Or like, what would create the greatest contribution for everyone involved? That might not necessarily be what I have judged as my best, right? And I would just want to, because we keep saying these things, so I want to like point it out to everybody, like questions, ask questions, right? Questions create space. Questions create the space for things to kind of percolate in the universe. And then as co-creators, right, then the universe jumps in and it's like, you asked? Like, here are all these different things, like you get to choose, right? So I don't want to step over that because we keep talking about asking questions, but like I want to highlight that that is a tool of creating change or transmutation or transformation or metamorphosis, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Like, ask fucking questions all day long. Be in the wonder, right? That's how you create the play. Like, well, what's next? Well, what would this be like? And what would that be like? And what if here? And what if there? And then watch, observe your life.
And
Pay
see what
attention.
unfolds.
Right. And choose,
Oh.
right? Take an action and choose and reduce the significance of whether it goes good or bad or up or down or in or out. Like, none of it really, it doesn't matter. You're just playing.
See, I still go back to my best. I have to. Because I'm like, I've been working on this process for so long, seriously, and I feel like this is how I operate. I'm like, if I know what my core values are, and I know that that's my best, right? And for me, it's like, being blissful, acting with integrity, creating impact, and then having eyes for the gifts. So that's like my core, right? And so from that core, that is my best, right? So definitely still asking questions, but being really aware of, like, when I'm in things, what aligns most with that. And I feel like sometimes, like, it's not even like totally honest, like it's not even a conscious question, because I'm like, okay, I know that these are my values, right? And so if I'm in a position, and I have 2 small children, and if I'm in a position where I'm like, okay, what is the best that I can be right now, and taking on all of the different roles that I get to have in this life, and then trying to operate from there with that kind of framework, it really helps guide me. Because I find if I allow too much ambiguity in my own life with the roles that I have, it can get to be, I need more structure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah.
I can totally dig that. I find that things are forever changing in my world, right? So like the values are changing. And I don't know if I've ever thought that deeply into it the way you stated it. Like, these are my core values. I function from this space, and I choose in alignment with these values to create the best version, right? Like, I don't know if I've ever like really thought it out that way. When I ask the questions of like what's next, it's always more like, right? Because, I'm from New York. We're a little gritty over here, right? So there's like the best, I don't know. I feel like it's always a play for me, in my experience. Like sometimes the not, what someone else may deem as not the good or best is what was required in that moment to create whatever, right? Like even now with what's going on. Is this the best thing that could be happening for us? It looks really ugly. I think it is the best thing that could be happening for us, but it doesn't appear that way, and some may judge it as it not being that way. So if it's always fluid, like what are the values? It's like, well, what's required in this moment? Yeah.
So I
But I
want to
really
touch
like the
on.
structure that you've created. I might try that out for a little bit and see how that works out for me. Like write it down, create a Google Doc, Thelma's core values.
Totally. I've done some like serious like deep diving to like figure this out. So I'm like, I'm like in any period of transformation, I feel like I'm constantly evolving and constantly on my growth game, like and I love that we have different approaches as well, right? Because that's the beauty. Like nothing has to be the same way, and what works for
Right.
one
It's
might
not one
might
size
not work
fits
for the
all.
other, or take bits and pieces and like make your own, and that's fantastic. You know what I mean? Like we find I don't know, I feel like we always get what we need, and I'm sure that in this conversation I'm gonna like loosen up a little bit too.
Well, that's the other beautiful thing, right? In the co-creation of all things, is that like you spot it, you got it. So it, like once you see it, you can then, if you like it, you include it in your stuff, right? And that's the becoming, the constant state of becoming. You could generate yourself to be however you want to be in each moment. You know, that's been a big practice for me for years, right? Because we have this idea that we are this one self, right? Like I am Thelma, I am this way, I am that way. I like this, I don't like that. I believe this, I don't believe that. And it's like none of that is even really real, right? Like we're just programmed and we're taught and how to be earthlings, and we just take on whatever was in our home and our schools and our all that, and there's really no freedom of choice, right? So we have this idea of what best is and what good is and what righteous is, and it's not necessarily that, right? We've just decided that. So playing in the space of like, if I can generate myself to be anything in each moment, and I can choose from all these things, then like what could I be right now?
Totally.
How
And
could
and
we?
Thelma, I think that
Yeah.
you're so like spot on with this, right? Because okay, so we grow up and we're these sponges, right? And we're taking on everything that's around us. We're consuming our environment, the people that have that are around us, our education, our media, our the news, the magazines, whatever. Like all of that starts to inform who we are, right? And if you've lived in like one culture, then that's what you know, right? And so it's like I've noticed, because now I've lived in Brazil and now I live in Australia, and I'm originally from California, and seeing these cultural differences are fascinating by how people operate in the world, right? And like the limitations that we put on ourselves based on our exposure, you know
Right.
and I feel like, and I I grew up in the center of California, and I had some pretty wild parents, and I still felt after leaving California that I had a lack of exposure, and that it's kind of funny to think about, but as I've reflected back on that, it's really been because I only knew what I had access to, right? And so I'm just going to keep going. So there's this thing, I don't know if you've read that book called Influence by Dr. Robert Cialdini. It's fantastic. And he talks about one of the core aspects of being humans, like from a primal level, is that, we stay consistent, right? So once we say that this is how I am, then we will do whatever we possibly can to stick with that. right?
To live
And
in
so,
there.
exactly. So if you only have had this much exposure and you're saying, nope, this is who I am, this is how I operate, and then like you're totally limiting yourself. And so your option of like, you know, being able to like think about it and be like, okay, so if I can be anything or anyone or do what I want, like, who is that? What is that? What does that look like? I love that. And it's so
Yeah.
playful.
Right. Yeah, and it makes it fun. So in parenting or in relationships or in like as dealing with my parents as in all my relations, when things come up, right? I'm like, who do I want to be right now?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do I want to respond to this? Like, what would I walk away feeling like really good about? You know? And sometimes that is what we call the best, right? The high road, our highest self. And frankly, sometimes that's me being a bitch and just being like super boundaries, super shadow dark, and like, no, fuck this. And I'm gonna smoke my cigarette and everybody could judge me and I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I wanna do. And everybody could judge me and it's all good, you know, because it's from here, right? It's not from out here and from what's been, you know, programmed in me. So I enjoy that freedom in choosing.
I appreciate that feistiness too. Like,
I do too. Even when I like try to like live without it, right? Because I try to be my highest and my good and like I'm meant to be happy, and then it just doesn't work. I totally resonate with Persephone's, you know, like goddess of what is it? She's the maiden of spring, god and queen of the underworld. So she spends like 6 months under. That's when we have winter, and she comes up and blossoms and is in the light for a while and dips back down. You know, feels good
so,
to me.
and this totally brings up, you know, that thing like, you know, when you are like embarking on major change, right? And you're like, okay, you know, and you see a model of something, you know, or a lifestyle or a way of operating in the world, and you're like, ooh, I really like that, or you know, and it resonates, right? But I know that I did this, like especially after I first started doing like Vipassana meditation, and I would be like, okay, this person that does, the people that do this are people that, you know, are really intentional and very, you know, kind of quiet, and they, you know, they're more natural, and this was the construct I had in my mind of what someone who does this thing does and looks like, right? And I feel like in my mind, I have an image now of like, it's almost like a suit of armor on a dog, where the dog is like shaking it off like you would water, to kind of like let, you know, that exterior go, to allow the real animal to come out, however it comes out. It's so bizarre, but that's exactly what came out right now. Well, so that if we get to create whatever it is, right? Like we get to create that new model of whatever it is, like because we are our own individual, you know, being in the world. And I feel like it's taken me a long time to really get that, you know, and that you know, like for me, that I can take pieces of, you know, of these different like genres or ways of operating in the world and just make them all my own. Like,
Yeah.
you know, to create my own new version of what it looks like to be, you know, I guess a mom and a woman and you know, an enlightened being and someone who speaks what they think and shares, and you know, maybe doesn't always do it in a linear way. And who can be a bit, you know, let me pull out a dog image with a set of armor.
No, man, I adore you in your ways, in your bubbliness, in your sunshine. Like it's been so pleasant, like so super pleasant having you in my reality and in my universe always. And I appreciate your processing. And, you know, like when we share, because we have this thing about us, right? It's like we we do such similar styles, but all in our own. We can always meet with it, you know? And I really appreciate that, because I don't have that with everyone.
Yeah, me either. And I totally appreciate that. And I appreciate that you have like this you have this really like strong, it's like a Venus and a Pluto nature to me, right? So I feel like you have this like super strong, like, first we'll go with like the Pluto energy of just kind of like, you're just going to like go extreme, and you know, you're gonna like, in my mind, you're just going to like obliterate any kind of preconceived notions, and you're going to kind of like obliterate like anything that is not working anymore. And I feel like, you know, you have this like deep understanding of like your shadow side, you know, and like the underworld and the things that you cannot see, that we cannot see. And then you have this other part that is, well, there's a few different parts. I just love you. So there's like the part of like, you know, your Venus nature, which is like so apparent. Like when you see like your beautiful face, right? Like you have like this beautiful moon face, and you have like this luscious hair and this like luscious body, and you know, like it's just really abundant, right? And then there's a mercurial part of you, which just I have adored since the beginning as well, because you have such a way with words. And it's like you receive them, and you mix them all together with your like, you know, Thelma magic. Like, oh no, I love it.
Oh, thank you, sister friend.
That's a wonderful combination.
You so much.
You know,
I really appreciate it. I really, really do.
I really want to have a full conversation about us and transformation. So maybe on the next Zoom.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Right.
Yeah. Let's talk about it, because it's happening whether we want it to or not. So, yeah.
Might as well be.
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you, Thelma. I know I said it was going to be 15 minutes, and just a little bit
totally
more.
Okay. No, okay. I loved every minute of it. I love you, and I'm so excited we're doing this. And yeah, let's talk transformation more. I'm looking forward to it.
Yay! Have a wonderful night. It's night for you. It's day for me. And
yeah.
All right.
Alrighty.
Lots of love.
Bye. Bye.